Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers, a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between.
I like that it makes you laugh.
I know. I was trying so hard not to laugh, but you started doing this. So she slapped her hands again. Classic Giggling Lou. My name's Callista, and this is
Giggling Lou, aka Gaia, for anyone else.
Yep. And today we're just continuing off of our last 2 episodes, which I know we'll get to a fun episode soon, y'all, but hopefully you've been enjoying this journey.
Yeah, I promise the next one will be much more lighthearted.
Yeah, but I think they enjoy it. I think it'll
be intense. Well, this will be your 3rd intense week. For people that have stuck around for all these intense weeks, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Also, just another warning. We are going to talk a little bit about suicidal thoughts today and suicide ideation, but not in a I don't know, not like a normal, we're not going to give you specific instances.
Yeah.
But in a sense of what it looks like in a abusive household and a narcissistic cycle, and how oftentimes that can be part of it.
Yeah, and also, can I just say what it looks like on the other side of things?
Yeah, and we're going to cover what it looks like to go no contact and what it looks like if you can't go no contact.
Yep.
And then the weapons that are used against you if you do that, or if in this case you speak out against your abusers, how you can fear retaliation and building up a community around you. So we're just going to kind of just tie up a lot of the stuff that we talked about the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, we're ending it in this episode, basically. So everything that you've heard or experienced in the last 2, this is kind of our closing chapter to those.
Yeah.
To that until we decide to talk about it again, which who knows, maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Yeah, but I promise our next episode we'll go back to something lighthearted and fun, just because we also need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But and then also another, I don't know, maybe it's a trigger warning, maybe it's a spoiler alert, there'll probably be more tears. So if you really like us crying,
this is the episode.
You're in for a good one too.
Right? Yeah.
So
this is the whole month for you, really.
Yeah.
My God.
The last 3 weeks for you guys is just a whole bunch of tears.
Yeah. So I mean, you said you wanted to. Do we want to start on cutting ties?
Yeah, because I feel like that kind of sums up where we're at. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to the last episode, you know that I come from a narcissistic household. And I have been no contact for 5 years.
Amazing.
And
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then that has also resulted in other family members are now no contact, not through any sort of decision on my side, but just because that's how it works. I am if you don't fucking know, if this is your very first episode with me, hi, I'm Gaia, and I have 2 speeds, and that is a dead body on the floor, where I have worked myself into a coma, or I am running at, as you always say, 160%.
Yeah. A cheetah on steroids.
Yeah. And so
full capacity cheetah. If it could train.
Yeah.
If it could train every day,
that is me. And I am in a new stage of life, which we'll talk about that whole after removing yourself from a toxic environment. Then it's acceptance now. I'm in a place where I'm learning to accept who I am. I'm obviously still working on things, but I've always been 0 or 160, and that is it. Mm-hmm. So for me, that looks like a no contact situation. I have a very hard time having contact with people that are harmful to me.
Yeah.
And I am lucky enough to be in a place where I have a support system where I can do that. Mm-hmm. I am not financially entangled with anyone anymore who is narcissistic or is harmful to me. Mm-hmm. And so I am very fortunate, and I recognize that. However, if you're not, once again, in the show notes, we'll have links for resources because not everyone can go no contact with their family, and not everyone can go no contact with spouses, if you've got a narcissistic child, I'm really sorry. That super sucks. Yep. Well, it sucks no matter what. If you have a narcissist that you can't go no contact with. Right. But it's really about building your love around you of people who can support you and also highlight these things. Mm-hmm. So you're really good that when I fall back into the belief of like, maybe I'm making this all up, maybe it's all wrong, maybe I'm wrong, you're a really good resource for me to also come back to be like, I don't know, maybe read a diary from when you were a kid, or like go back through and like remember those things.
Or like, you know, reminding you that like when toxic people do come back in your life, I'm really proud of this moment in our friendship of just letting you know, like, listen, I'm putting a time cap. Like, if you want to see these people, you can, but the time cap is X amount of days, and then we have to cut it off.
Which I'm also getting to a point where, like, that's not a thing for me, and I have a couple left people that I do...
Lingering people.
Yeah, like lingering individuals that I do have some contact with that puts me right back into that familial trauma. Yeah. And that's, like, part of, like, when you do remove yourself from that situation and say you have to go visit family or family comes and visits you, I understood this on a very like I guess like surface level, like on a very analytical, very like literal sense, but not internalizing that. And I wasn't sitting with that message that when you were around the people that you were a child with, aka siblings or family members, or even like friends from your childhood, you revert back to that. And it's very hard to not, because they treat you the same way. So in like my family's case, it's invalidating things I say. Or like you know, highlighted an area where I would be speaking and people would get up and leave the room in the middle of a conversation that I was having. And I would be apologizing. Or like I was having a conversation and they picked up the phone and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
And
but
to be clear, what are you talking about?
They didn't say, oh, I have to answer this phone. And nor did they say, excuse me. It's a form of invalidation that happens in toxic environments to show you that nothing you say matters. And like they would speak over me. And I personally am very bad that I get really excited and I cut people off. And that's something that for a long time, I absolutely despised that about myself. And I kept trying to work on it. And let's be frank, it never got better. And now it's just something that I make a point to, because for me, it's not, I don't cut people off because I'm like, I don't care what you say. It's because it just bursts out of my mouth.
Yeah, and it's so authentic. And that's what I love about it, honestly. Yeah. It used to be one of those cases of, we've had this conversation before, I love you in spite of this, and no, it's because I love you because of this now. Yeah. It's not in spite of, it's because it's so authentic. And also, you've gotten really good at being, at like circling back to people.
Yeah, because I learned that this was a behavior that instead of trying to punish myself for and just being like, you're a terrible person, you cut this person off, like, and just punishing myself, the same messages that I was taught as a child. And I've now learned that I'm like, you can't fix this about you. So we have to adapt the situations and then be like, I'm sorry, I cut you off, and then circle back. And like, in my family, it was very much a case that they would invalidate what you had to say by cutting you off or literally leaving the fucking room. Yeah. And this didn't happen once during a visit. This happened several times. And it is not a case for me that like the conversation isn't going to go anywhere, because I've tried to have conversations about it and it's just a constant thing of, well, if that's how you choose to remember it, if that's how you choose to take it. So it's not something that is going to be fixed. Yeah. Which for me looks like removing this person from my life, like just slowly just backing away and hoping that like eventually if it leads to a full altercation, it leads to a full altercation. And I'm fortunate enough that that's how I operate. And I know how I operate to know that like that's not good for me. But like when you are back in those places of like harm, then that's just how it works.
Yep, absolutely. So. Yeah, I definitely did want to, trace back to the whole like cutting ties, because I mean, I am no contact for not 5 years, but 2 weeks. Yeah, I think 2 weeks.
Yes, good job.
And I think I don't know, I'm kind of grateful for recording this podcast now, because now you have two ends of the spectrum. Hopefully it reaches the right people. So there are people who are still dealing with it from 5 years from now, and then there are people who are dealing with it, aka me, 2 weeks in. And just to touch on again, Dr. Romney, you're gonna hear me say her name so many times in this next 3 episodes, but I'm telling you, she changed my fucking life. She's amazing. I love her so much. And she is so incredibly validating in the fact that she says that this kind of trauma bond, this relationship with the narcissist very much is the same feeling as being addicted to drugs. And I know that like a lot of people are like, oh my God, don't equate like being in a situationship to like having a drug addiction. I get that. I'm not equating it to having an addiction with a substance or having substance problems. What I'm saying is that the withdrawals that you get from not talking to this person are so fucking real and so fucking valid. And it is painful and it doesn't make sense. How the fuck would it make sense to have withdrawals from someone that made you feel like shit? I don't know. But that is part of the process, is that like, no matter how bad this person treated you, you will still have to deal with the fact that there is going to be a part of you, a big part of you, that misses them, that craves that acceptance, that craves that like, I so badly want to go back into that place of like, no, I am the problem. I'm the issue here. This person was good to me, but I know that they weren't. And I know that I didn't feel good when I was with them. So why the fuck do I miss them so much? And that's part of the trauma bond. So from two different perspectives, how are you dealing with it 5 years out in no contact?
So, well, by the time this episode airs, we will have gone to South Carolina and be back, I'm pretty sure. Or we'll be like in South Carolina when this happens. And so I haven't been back to South Carolina because I didn't feel like it was safe for me emotionally to go. And so then, you know, I found out through like extra people and just like randomly that that person moved. So then I was like, okay, well, I would like to see my friends and like see some like old clients and stuff. And then that has really like drudged up a ton of stuff because I feel like I'm going back to the epicenter and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to show up. I don't know like what that is. So, I mean, there's a lot of like, even now just talking about it, like my heart rate like is going up, like, and I get like sweaty palms. And it's a very like, it is a very pure like fear, like trauma response where like there's a part of me that's like, or I could just not go. But I want to be able to like go and experience and like show you the South because that's a culture that has very much shaped me. And then have you meet like the people that were important in my life. And honestly, like as horrible as this sounds, more importantly, have these people who like knew me that have seen you and like experienced like, you know, my love of you.
Like,
our friendship and like that and have them be able to like actually meet you. So like for both sides, so like people that you hear me talk about a lot, you get to then see these people and then they get to see me like or see you. And then I get to like experience that. So that part's like great, but there is a huge like fear because you don't know, you know, like at any point.
I have a question, and it's kind of a hard question. Does that fear feel as visceral as it did when you first left?
No, absolutely not.
Nice.
It used to be a case because, just to be really clear, it does get easier.
Great.
It gets a lot easier. When this journey started, it started with that therapist telling me, and then I remember there was a point when I was sitting at a pizza place with my brother, like crying about the fact of like, how am I ever going to leave? Like how I don't know what a life looks without her. I don't know what I look like without her. And I don't know if she can like survive without me. And I don't know if I can survive without her. Like the enmeshment was so much so that like now I'm so far removed from that. It's hard to think of that place of like, holy shit, like you were so involved because at this point, like, you know, I've said it before, like I love you with all my heart and I love Caboose with all my heart. But I know that if something happened to either one of you, I would be okay.
Absolutely.
That like it would wreck me and I would be a different person on the other side of it, but I would still survive. And that wasn't like, I didn't know what survival looked like outside of that relationship.
I feel like that's what enmeshment looks like, right? Because I was about to touch on that where like, don't get me wrong, like if you decided not to do life with me, there would be a deep gaping hole inside of me and like this grief that I would have to, you know, work through and process, and it would be really incredibly hard. But I know that I'd be okay because like I'm a full functioning adult, and you gave me room to be a fully functioning adult without you, and to make my own decisions, to make my own friends, to like be a human being outside of our friendship. So when we talk about enmeshment, especially with narcissists, I feel like that's the key difference, right? There's a difference between like being in love with your people and enmeshment, which is what that was, right?
Yeah,
where it's like genuinely you did not see an other side to, you know.
No. And I was fortunate enough that I was more problem than I was worth. So then for me, leaving that situation, and because I had safeguarded, so I had made sure that I had all the correct documentation and everything like in place for me to leave, I was fortunate enough that I could, and it wasn't. But like in most cases, like when you try to cut ties with a narcissist, especially with that level of enmeshment, and it took me years to be able to get to a place where I could leave, like the emotional side, but then just on the practicality side. And I think that's what people have a hard time with, is that there takes all this work beforehand of figuring out how you're going to do it, when's the right time, what's the correct way to do it. And then also, like, you know, I think Dr. Romney talks about it. They talk about insight a lot. I think Helen actually covered it mostly, where it was like how difficult it is. So if you were to divorce a narcissist, it takes years and it is messy. And if you have kids with them, they will hold that against you. And like for me, that looked like walking away from my business, which was my baby. And at that point, leaving my business that I had put my heart and soul in and had spent 12 years putting not just like my heart and soul, but my money and everything. Like I walked away with nothing.
Well, yeah, your love for it.
Yeah, and my love for it and all of that. And like just straight walking away was incredibly difficult. But just to kind of take like a little bit of like a side note there, like this is when that suicide trigger warning comes back in. I didn't realize that it wasn't normal to always feel suicidal until we left, and until we moved out here. And then talking to Caboose one day, and it was probably like a couple months in, and I realized that like I didn't necessarily intentionally go no contact. I just knew that like I didn't want to, and to be frank, she just never did. Yeah. There was like a post on the internet where she tried to make herself out to be a victim and to be like, oh, I've like tried, and there was no contact on her side to even bother. And like the pain that happens as a child when you're like, hey, my own parent does not care enough about me to like do any of that. And I had sent that first year, I'd sent out a plant. I sent out succulent for Mother's Day because I was like, I don't know what this looks like. And I'm still trying to essentially like wean myself off of this relationship. Yeah. And then like there was no reciprocation, like nothing. Like it was just like I was essentially dead to this person until that post happened. And then I got, well, and this is where we'll talk about flying monkeys in just a second. I know we keep saying we'll talk about it, but I promise we will. Yeah. And I felt this like huge weight that had come off me. But I think that's also because I spent years mourning the loss of the relationship that I can now say it. I'm gonna fucking say it, that I deserved, the like mother that I deserved as a child. And it's taken a long time to get to a place where I can say that, because it would be like the mother that I wanted or that I'd hoped for, but it's also the one, thanks to fucking Insight for giving me the language, is that I deserve that. I deserved a mother who loved me unconditionally. And like now I know what unconditional love looks like. Absolutely. But like you and Caboose had to help me through that. So like if you go back to those episodes where I had to learn how to rest, and I had to learn that like my love was not based in performance, and it's still something that I occasionally go back there, but I'm not there all the time. Yeah. But I didn't know what it was like to not want to die, to actually be like, if I got hit by a bus, to steal the analogy that you had earlier, if I got hit by a bus today, I would be sad to die. Like, if it was a case of like I watched my life, I'd be like, man, I have so many people. And the more I learn to like love myself and just authentically show up, where I'm like, you know what? I'm abrupt. I'm going to ask you really invasive questions out of pure curiosity. And I, like we talked about it earlier, I have very like hard opinions on things, but I love people that challenge me.
Fuck yeah.
And now I have people in my life that challenge me on these things. And that brings me so much joy that like, if I died today and could see everyone else in my life, I would be sad that I do not get to continue having life.
Absolutely.
And I didn't know what that looked like until we moved out here. So until I was 30, did I know that it wasn't, and I say this in quotations because fuck the idea of actually normal, but it wasn't normal to fantasize about dying all the time.
Yeah, like this could be my out,
Yeah, that it would just be easier, that now I get that occasional, especially seasonal depression. So like if you listen to that episode, like that amount of like seasonal depression gets pretty bad. But now it's not a like everyday thing where I think that it would just be easier and that everyone else's life would be easier if I died. That now I get that. I feel like the more, once again, normal in quotations, where it happens every once in a while, but it's not a everyday thing of like, it would just be better if you died because you're a horrible person. And then in order to be loved, you have to do horrible or say horrible things.
Absolutely. Yeah, to be introduced into an actual safe environment and to be able to have the autonomy to cultivate that safe environment without that person breathing down your neck. Yeah. And like controlling every relationship because
manipulating every relationship where they will drop poison into every relationship. So nothing's ever safe.
So you can remain codependent to this person. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a case of like when I did have people like Caboose was a phenomenal husband that he, just like with you in this like previous relationship, it wasn't my place to speak up. In that it's my place to catch you when you fall. It is not my place to control like the outputs of your life. And he would not control. And also he didn't have the language. I didn't have the language. But he would stand up for me in, other ways. And then that meant that like, she literally threatened to have him killed. And she told him that if he didn't fix our relationship, he would be killed. Yeah. And very, seriously told him that. And it was something, and like then told him how like I had cheated on him. And he was like, I fucking know she did. And like tried everything she could to separate that and like to harm that. And that was where, to lead back to that, like flying monkeys, is that's what happens, is that when you remove yourself from a narcissistic relationship, they will weaponize the people in their life against you. So like when she had made that post, a ton of people who would have never had my phone number were calling me and leaving me voicemails. And I didn't give my phone number to these people.
Psycho.
And I woke up that morning with 50 some odd messages from people sending me that post that she could have contacted me directly and she did not. And that's one of those cases of like, you did that as a narcissist. And
let's make it clear. If she was able to get our address somehow to send all of this shit, then she could have very well contacted you.
Because the package that I just got, I got a package of like yearbooks and stuff. Yeah. And Caboose casually brought up the fact that he was like, how did she get our fucking address?
Right. How does she know that?
Yeah, we've moved. Also, if there's barking, I'm really sorry. We're real people. We have dogs. We do this out of our house. And I think my husband just got home. So yeah, like that's the thing is that, I've watched her hire private detectives on individuals. So it's like no one's safe in that sort of world. And so like to come on, and this is a public platform, it is terrifying because I am afraid of that retaliation, because I've had that in the past where like people that I know and love have then been used as weapons against me, which is why they call them flying monkeys, because it's from the Wizard of Oz when she says, fly, my pretties.
Right. So yeah, let's touch on what the actual definition of flying monkeys is and why it's so terrifying. So flying monkeys, I think both Insight and Dr. Romney talk about, right?
Because it's a very common tactic of narcissists. And it leads that fear of leaving.
Right. And it comes from the Wizard of Oz, obviously. So it's basically flying monkeys are when a narcissist gathers people who are close to both of you. So any kind of like mutual friendship or relationship that you have, plus like their friends, so the narcissist's closest friends, they get their flying monkeys and they rally them and they spit off this narrative of like this person who is, obviously separated themselves from me is wrong and bad because, again, one of the, like the Venn diagram of all narcissists, the worst thing that you can tell them is no, or like to set a boundary. So imagine what happens when you cut contact. That's when like the retaliation comes in. That's when they gather on their flying monkeys, spin this whole narrative about you and get their flying monkeys to attack. Yeah.
And in my case, it was a woe is me. I've been abandoned by my child.
Yeah. And she won't talk to me anymore. Like A, B, C, D, E. Yeah. Like, again, victimizing themselves because they're never the problem.
Yeah. And the amount of these messages, just to be clear, the amount of messages that were like, you have, I'm her best friend. Like, how many fucking best friends does this person have?
Yeah.
Like, I am their best friend. You are causing her harm. You don't know, like, how hard it is. Like, and just the ability to play the ultimate victim where, like, to be clear, like, we are not doing this to, like, victimize ourselves because, once again, this is a educational thing.
Yeah.
And if it's a case of, like, this situation, the individuals we are speaking about, like, I don't want you to, like, look at them in a bad light. You are allowed to have a friendship. You're allowed to have a relationship. Like, I didn't turn to any of my family and say, hey, you can't talk to this person because it was very much a case of, like, my relationship is my relationship. And I've been really strong in that boundary my whole life of, like, you have relationship with the people that I don't know, and that's great because I don't want to know everyone in your life.
Yeah.
And you have relationships with people that I don't give a shit about these people. Like they don't like hit on my radar. I hear stories about them, but I would never come in and say, hey, you can't have a relationship because this person was rude to me. This person was like shit, nothing. Because I believe that, like, you can have a relationship with a narcissist and you don't see them as a narcissist. And that is totally A-okay. But that's where it comes back to, like, when someone tells you where their boundary is in a relationship, like, don't, like, unwittingly be a flying monkey.
Yeah.
And, like, that's what I'd responded to so many of these people was because I wrote back to all of them and was like, hey, you think you're being helpful, but you are participating in my abuse. You are causing so much pain. Because imagine just one day you wake up and there was voicemails from people and there were 50 some odd messages from strangers, and not some of them were from, like, oh, I'm coming from a good place, and other ones were nasty and vile. And just to be really clear, like, I've read the things that have been said about me from her directly, and, like, they're disgusting. And I can now say that and be like, look, I don't need you to fucking copy and paste that to me because that is not a kind thing. And also, you don't know someone else's relationship. So when you think you're being helpful, and, like, in most of their cases, I'm sure they thought they were connecting a mother and daughter back together. But you have to ask yourself, like, why is this person no longer in contact with someone?
Yeah.
Because by the time someone separates themselves, especially, like, by the time a child separates themselves from a parent,
absolutely,
the amount of pain that has been, like, caused to get to a point where, like, now I am for sure no contact. Like, I have taken the measures to, like, block a phone number. But that being said, not everyone's phone number is blocked. So if there was an avenue where that person had to, but, like, I can't go to family events. I couldn't go to my grandfather's funeral because I know that for me, that is not a safe place emotionally. And also, it's not fair to other people around, because when you are no contact with someone like that, you don't know what's going to happen when you do see them. And you know that the fallout is going to be huge.
Absolutely.
And by the time you make that choice, you have been in pain for so fucking long.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to talk about as well as like, I don't know, to just kind of relate to you, like what I guess the withdrawals of this person look like, because even though they send flying monkeys and everything like that, like I'm very much still on the, on this, like waiting for the other shoe to drop, I guess, for the flying monkeys to happen. And I'm hoping it happens behind closed doors, because I was lucky enough that like my situation we'd only like been involved with each other for like 9 months on and off. And like we had known each other previously, but like it was a whole theme that like I had left and disappeared for 4 years to get my shit together. Cause like honestly, that's what happens with life and adults, and like we weren't that close. So that's
also
what happens. Guilt language is like key. And I'm getting really good at identifying it. So don't even fucking try. If you're listening to this and trying to, you know, spur guilt language on me, now my radar's up to here. So I'm going to catch you. But, you know, I had only been involved with this person for 9 months on and off. So I can only imagine what it's like to be involved with and enmeshed with someone who's a narcissist for 20 some odd years, you know? So what, I guess, was your experience dealing with withdrawals? Because for right now, I'm in this phase of having nightmares.
I mean, so just to be clear, the nightmares, honestly, they'll probably happen forever for me. And like, as we get closer to like, hey, I'm going back into, like, I feel like I'm going in the lion's den. So even though, as far as I know, this person is gone, the nightmares are back and they're awful. And when we first left, the nightmares were horrendous. And you've seen me cry, because the like amount of pain that is caused by those withdrawals is huge. Like the only thing I can think of is it's the same thing with like with alcohol and with substance abuse, that it is hard. Like it fucking hurts. It hurts physically, it hurts emotionally, and you want to just blame yourself because it's easier if you say I'm the problem,
especially if you're a child that comes from that household.
And it is hard, and like that's all I can honestly say is that like it sucks. Like there was a part of me that felt immense relief because I was able to breathe, but I had also spent several years before I left doing the work so I could leave. Whereas like now you had like a couple weeks of like learning about this, realizing, oh shit, I'm in a terrible situation, and then being able to leave like early. So now a lot of your work is after the fact, and a lot of the work is after the fact. Like there are still days that fucking suck. Mother's Day, I'm not 100% sure that will ever get better. Like it's gonna suck no matter what, because there's also that fear of, I don't know if she's gonna reach out. I don't know who's gonna fucking punish me on Mother's Day for not doing that. I don't know what's gonna happen. And like I had made a joke on Father's Day, and then that got like a fucking nasty text back about just forget about me and imagine I'm dead, and just this like ultimate victimization. And it was actually the Sinead O'Connor documentary that made me realize like, I do not need to stop talking about this because this is my pain. As you said last time, this is my story. And even though someone might not like it, this is my life. And I still have nightmares. I've had nightmares for the last fucking week. And I know that like, it's not going to go away until we get back. And that is the price I'm paying, like for going. But it, like the grief of the loss, like when I see like good mothers with their kids, like it's hard. And when you know that like you didn't get that. And then on top of that, you'll never have that. And so it's one of those cases that like they talk about on Insight a lot. That's what you guys are going to hear me say. It's for her, it's Dr. Romney. For me, it's Insight. Is that like for a lot of people that healing can't start until their parents dead. So like that book where it just came out with, I think it's Jeanette something or other, and she talks about like, I'm glad my mother died.
Jeanette McCurdy,
and the fucking world freaked out and was like, that's a terrible thing. But like when you were a child of abuse, like to me that made sense because like I thought for sure that I would not have the ability to speak out because I feared like the retaliation and I feared the like rejection from my family for speaking out. That it, part of why like I kept all my journals was because I had all this like knowledge in them as a teenager and I wanted to be able to publish a book later in life. And I knew that like even when I was in South Carolina, I was like, when she passes, then I'll be able to write a book and publish a book to hopefully help one fucking young girl out there.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, this is, your feelings are valid, your stories are valid, which is why podcasts like Insight really help because I get to hear people's actual stories.
Oh my God, yeah.
And realize that like I was not alone and that these behaviors are habitual and that these behaviors happen all the fucking time. And just to be clear, because I don't think we've talked about the statistics of it, I think Dr. Romney said it was like 1 in 10 people are typically like narcissistic. So when you're like, I don't know a single person, like, nah, dude, you probably do.
Or I've at least met them or, you know.
Yeah, you've met them. So then instead of just kind of like brushing it to be like, well, you're the problem, because once again, that's what society says, especially it's very different with a mother as opposed to a father, because our society is very much okay with a deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
If you don't talk to your dad, everyone's like, oh yeah, whatever.
Makes sense. Like,
but
that's
if you
like
don't
part of
talk
the
to your
thing.
mom, people get angry at you for it. And they get mad because in their brains, they're like, what? It's a fear-based response. It's what if my kids grow up and feel this way about me? Which leads me to 2 quotes that I'm obsessed with lately. And one of which, and I don't remember where I saw them, sorry. One of which was that you will have more of a relationship with your child when they are an adult than you will like when they're a kid. You will have more time with them, hopefully, assuming that they live a long enough timeline, you live a long enough timeline. You know them for a longer timeline as an adult. So cultivating that relationship instead of this like controlling them as a child, but cultivating a person that you want to hang out with when you're older, like helping them feel confident in your relationship.
Yeah.
And the other was that the relationship that your children have with you when they are an adult is a report card for how you did when they were a child.
Huge.
And it's really interesting when you tell people that, because then you get to like see their response of like, oh, fuck. Whereas like it makes sense because like my stepdad and I, like we very much like as he went through the divorce and I went through removing myself from that enmeshment, we also went through the healing together where we discussed these things, where it was like, hey, this is how I participated in your abuse. This is how you participated in mine.
Yeah.
And like we had conversations where he apologized and was like, I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you and that I didn't protect you. And that allowed me to then be like, that makes like, it doesn't change the fact that it still hurt, but I know that like he is aware of this. And like one of my brothers and I, we had that conversation and it was beautiful. And it's one of the last conversations we had was that he was like, yeah, we all participated in that. But then the choice there led to what does our future look like? And for me, it's very much a case of like, you can't know me and you can't be a part of my life if I can't discuss this. Because even though it's been 5 years, every time I learn something new, and especially as I'm like in my 30s, learning more about myself and learning to accept myself, I have to then sit with what are these parts of me that are trauma responses from being raised in that. And if I can't talk to you about it, I can't have a relationship with you, because then you're asking me to hide a huge part of who I am, which like back to Sinead O'Connor's thing, she was abused as a child because of the Catholic Church. And she said she'd spend the rest of her life speaking out against it. And that's the thing, is that it made me realize like, yo, I'm a child of abuse and I should not sugarcoat my life experiences to make other people feel comfortable.
Fuck yes. Fuck yes.
Because at that point, fuck off.
Yeah, because that's the whole reason why, like, as children, we felt so alone, right?
Yeah.
Is because we thought we were the only ones. And now we have all of these adults coming forward and being like, no, this is not okay. No, this is what I'm dealing with. No, this is real and this is valid and this is who I am and this is how my brain works. And I am so grateful for the platform that we have. And the platform that we, are in, and just the things that other people have been posting, because it's so much deeper.
Shout out to TikTok.
Shout the fuck out. Like, honestly, you guys are crushing it, because it creates a safe environment as well to talk about all the things that we're going through, these real mental issues that people have tried all their lives to just hush, stay quiet about it. It's not normal, I say in air quotes. It's not okay. It's not, this is your own problem. No, fuck that. We have a whole community dealing with the same things, and we're all finally kids as adults with voices. Yeah. Being able to speak out about this shit, and we're done being silenced. We're done. Oh my God. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So what does that look like for you? Because you said right now you're in the stage of nightmares.
Yeah. I'm still fresh into it. No contact. And I just wanted to shout out to one of my friends, because he's the reason why I went full no contact. He took my phone and I was updating him like, I think I've ended things. But
at a party.
While we were both fucking wasted, by the way. Absolutely gone. 3 sheets to the wind. And I had updated him like, we're done. I ended things, but he keeps reaching out. And I'm really scared. I'm like waiting for that like really angry drunk text message, because I feel like that's the next step. It's like him getting angry and sending me something nasty. And so he took my phone and it was like, what's your passcode? And I told him. He, entered it in. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? Because I thought he was just going to take a selfie or something. But no, he took my phone, blocked this guy, and then deleted his phone number off my phone, and then also deleted all of our text messages. And I don't think my friend knows exactly what he did, but homie made like a completely different alternate timeline. That's what it felt like to me. It was massive. It was huge. It was impactful. And I was like, holy fuck. And he gave me back my phone and he's like, there you go. You're free. Yeah. Now you're officially done. How do you feel? And I was like, I feel so light. Like I had told him, I'm like, I don't think you know the extent of what you did for me, but I would not have had this strength to do exactly what you did just now.
And the bravery, because like you could have responded with so many other, like, you could have been mad. Like,
I could have been pissed off.
That's
like, why would you do that? Like, that's so
the
invasive.
Bravery for this person to, it shows where they know you, where like they knew you didn't have the strength to do that. Yeah. And they knew that they could take that burden from you. It's where, like we said in the last thing, if anyone has anything like vile or nasty to say in response to this, if you are indeed a flying monkey, or you are the culprit yourself, or you are a culprit to someone else and you feel the need to say some nasty shit, like my husband will be reading all of this, the caboose that produces. He will be reading all like comments, fielding and screening, because like retaliation is a fear. And he will be like censoring that, because he knows that for me, reading like not nice things is a horrible place and spirals me back into thinking I'm a terrible person. And like your friend knew that you were waiting for that, and that would be so harmful to you. Yeah. And took that off of you. He was like, all right, I got you.
Guess what? You don't have to.
And the bravery of that to like risk you being upset and to know that was good. Like,
it was like
phenomenal.
It was, true like platonic love in its most purest sense, where it's like, no, like I want what's best for you, and you might not be happy about it, but this is what's best. And like I said, it felt like he like created a new alternate timeline. It felt like he changed it. I remember journaling about it, and when I journaled about it, I said it literally felt like he changed the course of history right in front of me. And I was so grateful for that. And I was riding that high for a while, but obviously that high kind of dies off a little bit. And then you go through withdrawals, and I find myself fantasizing about making up, about like, well, maybe if I spin it this way, it is my fault. Like, I am just afraid of like true connection. And I know that's not true.
Yeah. As somebody who is doing life with you, I would say that's 100% not true.
Absolutely. I was willing to gaslight myself and to change my whole like perception of how things were really going in order to accept this person back into my life and let them continue to harm me emotionally and mentally and drain me of all my confidence. So right now, what it looks like to me is taking all that energy and journaling a lot, and not just like passive journaling, which I'm guilty of, but like actively asking myself hard questions. Like, what does a safe relationship look like? What are the things that he did to you that you felt were wrong? What were the red flags that you ignored? What are things that you can do to help secure your boundaries? What are things that you can do to make sure that this doesn't happen again, essentially? Yeah,
because that's something that we discovered, that for both of us, boundaries are a really, like, almost non-existent thing.
For sure. For sure.
Because of that idea that everyone is coming from a good place.
Because we're trusting that.
Yeah, because we trust that everyone is good. So we would, like, we were talking to our boss about the fact that, like, some shady behavior that happened, and I was talking on your behalf because you weren't in a place that you could talk about it, and he just looked at me and was like, what the fuck? And I was like, well, because, and I found myself making excuses for this person because I was like, well, like, there could be reasons. And then he was like, sit with that for a fucking second. He's like, absolutely not. That's fucking shit behavior. And we have a tendency that we will make excuses for people's shitty behavior.
Absolutely.
So it's even that case where I'm like, oh, well, maybe they're just unwittingly flying monkeys. And I'm like, I don't know. When you wrote that fucking message,
that was nasty.
Yeah. Are you unwittingly a flying monkey, or do I need to hold people accountable for their actions? And that is a boundary.
I love that.
That's where it's hard for me. And that's where, like, this, going out and being public about it is part of, like, my next step. Now, is it terrifying? Yes, it is. It's fucking scary as shit.
Oh, for
Same
sure.
as, like, going back to, like, the place where all of this happened. That's fucking terrifying. But when, no matter how it goes down, I know that when I get back from this trip, I will be in a better place. I will, if there's no fucking primo, if something happens, I know it's partly why you're coming with me is A, because I want you to meet people, but also because you're, like, I don't know, my emotional security person.
Yeah.
And because you are the quickest person that if I fall back into those, like, familial habits of, like, feeling like I'm wrong or small or stupid, you're really good to be like, no, ma'am. Nuh-uh. And will, like, help pull me back out. So you're this lifeline for me that says, nope. And it, like, helps me then know that, like, okay, I don't have to do this by myself. Because even 5 years after the fact, because it isn't just one individual, it's an entire community of people.
Flying monkeys.
Of flying monkeys. And it's also a family. And so you are really good because you are that lifeline of, like, the life that I currently live in, which is one that is full of, like, people that know me and love me.
Yep.
And so it's like, you need that. Like, you needed your friend to be like, this is what real love looks like. It looks like a fucking boundary.
Yeah, it looks like we are cutting this tie off and burning this bridge and making sure that you're not tempted to reach out.
Yeah.
And that he literally can't reach out because you won't be getting these messages.
Also, can I just do a side note here? This only works nowadays because of the fact that you probably don't know this person's phone number by heart.
No.
This whole, like, deleting their number would not have worked 20 years ago because I know people's phone numbers by heart. So I'd be like, well, I could fucking just dip right back into that shit in a heartbeat.
I'm stoked.
So it's great because it works right now.
Absolutely. I'm stoked. And who's to say, I mean, honestly, he could reach out by, like, making different accounts and a blah, 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 blah. But I'm lucky that so far so good. And I have that same, like, support group with you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's partly, too, where that pain is, where it's like, if you wanted so bad to have a relationship, you could have that contact. But it's that, like, oh, no, you're more of use to this person. The moment you make it a slight hiccup to get to know them or, like, to have that direct contact with them, then you're more used to them as a like, for them to be a martyr, for them to be like, woe is me, this person was horrible, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Because then that's much more beneficial. Because then, once again, you're that crazy person.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm that abandoning child. I am that, black sheep of the family. I'm that shit stirrer.
Fuck, I'd rather be the fucking crazy girl that, like, dropped him out of nowhere and had no explanation and has horrible mental health issues than the girl who stayed.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be that girl than the girl who stayed because I mean, props to you if you stay. There are resources out there for you.
Yeah, if you cannot leave, there are lots of resources. I would absolutely say Dr. Romney and Insight. And also there's lots of other things. Like the book that the therapist gave me was harsh title, man. Will I Ever Be Good Enough?
Fuck.
It's for daughters of narcissistic mothers.
Yeah.
And when I read that book, I sobbed and sobbed because I felt like somebody had taken my diary and there were like passages that I would read to Caboose. And he was like, you've literally told me this story before.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt like, okay, I'm not alone. There are systems, like there are ways to like work through this. So like shout out to every single professional that wrote these books. We fucking love you and you are saving lives. Because there is a solid chance I would not be here today without that. And to anyone who knows me now, I would not be the person I am today if it was not for these resources.
Yep.
Because like, yeah, you're doing amazing. I guess one last thing, because I know once again, this is a really long episode.
Oh, for sure.
Is I wanted to talk really fast because I just learned something and it's not as like heavy as everything. So we'll end on a slightly lighter but educational note. Yeah. I learned about passive aggression.
Oh, yeah.
This past week. And I've been telling everyone about it because a lot of people deal with like situations by being passive aggressive. And I say a lot of people, most people. And I too am guilty. And now that I understand more about it, I can catch myself and then have more direct conversations. But that's that part of me that is that like, I would rather have a direct conversation with you than be forced to be passive aggressive. And passive aggressive, like, stems from that childhood of not feeling like you can say things to people. So it kind of stems back to a little bit of like where we talk about if people chronically lie to you, maybe sit with why people lie to you. And it's because you don't create a safe environment for someone to lie.
Yep.
And people learn to be passive aggressive because when they were children or say early in a relationship, whatever, they do not feel like it is safe for them to speak out. And some people, it's just because like, they view emotions as bad emotions.
Yep.
We have I personally believe that all emotions are good emotions, but I think like when it comes to science, they're typically like emotions are just emotions. They're neither good or bad. But with passive aggression, it's because like, okay, so say you've done something to upset me and I don't feel like I can tell you, no one farted. That was Bailey shaking her ears in case you picked that up. It's my fear. I just think people think we're just sitting
constantly
in here farting.
Yeah, and not acknowledging it.
Someone's just listening in their car and like, did someone fart just then? But if you've done something and I don't feel like I can have a conversation and be like, hey, when you did that hurt my feelings. So say like I go to show you a tattoo and you just look at it and you're like, yeah, okay. And then I feel hurt because I instantly feel like a small child, like trying to show you artwork and be like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Be excited with me. And you did not mirror that back to me. Then I feel like, oh no, I've been rejected. And if I do not have the language within myself and the communication with you in the safe environment to say, hey, when you did that hurt my feelings. Then I will then internalize and be like, okay, fine. I'm just not going to talk to you. And then you'll come in and you'll try to talk to me. Like, I might ignore you. I might stonewall. And then later you're like, hey, do you want to go out for coffee? I'm like, oh, so now you're talking to me? Oh, so now you want to hang out? And you're like, what the fuck?
What do you mean? What are you talking? Wait, what happened?
And I will continue to do that. And typically like what I was like learning about was that we will tend to do that about 3 or 4 times of you being like, are you mad at me? What's going on? Like, what's happening? And it's the reason that happens is because I need that safety for this bid for connection. So even though passive aggression is not a good, I say that very loosely, bid for connection. It's not an effective bid for connection. It then, with you asking me, are you mad? What's going on? Allows me to feel safe with you that you actually care. That you have not rejected me, that you want to know what's wrong and that you are interested. And then when I say, when you did this, it hurt my feelings. This is another one of those like moments where it's a sliding door moment where you can say, oh, hey, I was super tired. I'm sorry. Like
I didn't
my
even
bad.
register. Like
didn't even realize that. Or you can then come in and be like, you know, you too can be passive aggressive and be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're always acting like this. Like, you're always acting like I'm just mad at you. And then what that's going to do is that's going to further push me down that rabbit hole of being upset and feeling rejected.
Right.
So even though it's not the most efficient way for healthy communication, it is an actual bid for connection. And learning that over the last week has allowed me, because we have people in our lives that do not yet know how to have those safe conversations. And so just going around talking to people about being passive aggressive has allowed it so that way, especially at our work where you have all these different personalities, and we are trying to cultivate a place where we work where we can all just have honest communication.
Yeah.
And just be able to speak freely, to be like, I am having a shit day, y'all. If I am in a bad mood, I am really sorry. I'm just grumpy. And no one's taking offense from that. Instead of people thinking, oh, she's mad at me.
Yep.
Now we're creating that. And so by having the conversation around passive aggressive, and then noticing when I feel the need to do that, when I feel a rejection, Bailey shook her ears again, that I am not going to be passive aggressive. And I thought for me, that was such a revolutionary thing, because so many times people are being passive aggressive because they don't feel like they can talk.
Yeah.
And they just don't know the language around it. And so I just wanted to explain that to y'all.
Fucking crazy.
So, yeah.
Right?
Also, the episode that you learn about that in is episode 7. It's called Hijacked on Insight. And they explain it much more eloquently and I think more briefly than I do.
Whatever. I thought it was great.
So for this week, what is your win?
My win for this week is keeping him blocked.
Yes! That's an awesome win.
That's my win.
That's an amazing win.
Thank you. Appreciate it. What was your win?
My win is last night, I started drawing again.
Fuck
for fun, not for tattoos.
For funsies.
And I'm really excited because we have more friends that are artists that want to promote us getting together and watching movies and drawing and just that make it feel safe. It feels like a place where I can draw without judgment.
Yeah.
So, and it's not drawing for tattoos and not drawing for productivity, but drawing for fun.
It just, you know what it feels like? It does, it's very reminiscent of a bunch of nerds hanging out at art class. And I miss that. I really fucking miss that.
So that's my win, is getting back into drawing and being excited to show people.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Great win.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. Once again, if you have anything, please send us messages. You can reach us on, I think we're on TikTok.
Yeah, we're on TikTok.
TikTok, Instagram. You can reach out to us individually. And if you have any critiques, any criticisms, absolutely send them in. Yeah. And I will give this spoiler one last time. If you have anything nasty to say, keep it to yourself.
Eat it.
Yeah. Because it won't get to us anyway. So I wouldn't even try. Okay, we love you for everyone who doesn't have nasty things to say. And if this resonated with you, please reach out. I love those stories so much. You don't have to share your individual stories if you don't want to. If you want us to talk about anything, always tell us. We will love to talk about it.
Yep.
So thank you guys so much. We love you and have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.